when I saw two police officers walking up my driveway with handcuffs. I figured there had to be some mistake, but when they tried to arrest me just because I planted the wrong shade of grass on my own lawn, I realized these weren't real officers at all. The biggest shock? I'm the police chief of this very town. My name is Detective Mike Rodriguez, and I've been serving as police chief for this small community for over 15 years. In all my years in law enforcement, I never imagined my biggest challenge would come from my own front yard, not the police station. It all started when I moved into my new property in Greenwood Heights, an upscale neighborhood where every house looked picture perfect and the HOA rules were stricter than a military base. Within the first week, I received a notice that read, "Your lawn grass shade doesn't match community standards." I thought it was a joke. I had hired a professional contractor for the complete landscaping, all with proper permits. But according to HOA President Margaret Wilson, my grass shade was disrupting community harmony. Margaret Wilson was a 65-year-old, retired teacher who treated the HOA like her personal kingdom. She had been president for 8 years and ruled with an iron fist. Every blade of grass, every mailbox color, every garden gnome had to meet her approval. What I didn't know was that she had been getting away with increasingly illegal tactics to enforce her vision. The harassment started small. Daily violation notices for imaginary infractions, fines for my car being parked incorrectly in my own driveway, complaints about my work schedule disrupting the peaceful morning atmosphere. When I left for early shifts, I tried reasoning with her, explaining that as a police officer, I sometimes had emergency calls. She didn't care. If you're enjoying this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Things escalated when Margaret discovered I was the police chief. Instead of backing down, she seemed to take it as a personal challenge. She began claiming I was using my position to intimidate her, which was completely false. I had never once mentioned my job title in our interactions, and I certainly never used my authority inappropriately. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning. I was working in my garage when my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, rushed over looking panicked. "Mike, there are 2 police officers asking about you at Margaret's house," she whispered. "They look really serious." I walked outside to see what was happening. 2 men in police uniforms were standing with Margaret pointing toward my house. Something felt off immediately. First, I knew every officer in our small department, and these weren't our guys. Second, their uniforms were slightly wrong. The badges looked fake, and the belt equipment was all wrong. As they approached my driveway, one of them called out, "Are you Mike Rodriguez?" When I confirmed, he continued, "You're under arrest for harassment and intimidation of a community official." I almost laughed. "Excuse me, officer, but I'm going to need to see some identification. I'm actually the police chief here, and I don't recognize either of you." That's when things got interesting. The fake officers looked at each other nervously. The taller one stepped forward aggressively. "Doesn't matter who you claim to be, you're coming with us." Margaret stood behind them with a smug smile, clearly thinking her plan was working perfectly. What she didn't realize was that I had been recording everything on my phone since the moment I saw the fake uniforms. "Gentlemen," I said calmly, "I'm going to give you one chance to walk away before this becomes a real problem. Impersonating police officers is a felony, and I have everything recorded." The shorter fake officer actually reached for his handcuffs. Big mistake. In one fluid motion, I had him face down on my driveway with his own cuffs on him. His partner tried to run, but didn't make it past Mrs. Chen's garden before I caught him. Don't forget to like this video if you want to see more stories like this. Real backup arrived within minutes, my actual officers responding to my radio call. The fake officers turned out to be Margaret's nephew and his friend, both with criminal records for fraud and theft. Margaret had hired them for $200 each to scare me into moving away. As I watched Margaret getting arrested in her own driveway, she kept screaming about how this was all unfair and how I was abusing my power. The irony was lost on her completely. The investigation revealed that this wasn't Margaret's first rodeo. She had been using similar tactics for years to force out residents she didn't like. We found evidence of harassment, mail theft, property damage, and multiple instances of hiring people to intimidate homeowners. 3 other families came forward with similar stories once word got out. Margaret Wilson was ultimately charged with conspiracy, harassment, soliciting criminal activity, and a dozen other charges. Her nephew and his friend got felony charges for impersonating officers. The HOA board immediately removed Margaret from her position and implemented new oversight procedures. The best part? My grass was never the wrong shade. I had the landscaper's invoice and photos proving it matched the exact specifications in the HOA guidelines. Margaret had been fabricating violations from day one. 6 months later, Greenwood Heights is a much more peaceful community. The new HOA president is reasonable and follows actual rules instead of personal vendettas. I still live in the same house with the same grass and nobody complains anymore. Sometimes people ask me how I stayed so calm during the whole ordeal. The truth is, 15 years in law enforcement teaches you to spot fake authority from a mile away. Margaret's biggest mistake wasn't hiring fake officers. It was underestimating someone who deals with actual criminals every day. If you enjoyed this story about justice being served, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We share real stories about people standing up to bullies and getting the justice they deserve. What would you have done in my situation? Let us know in the comments below and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest videos.